to us that our own methods, no matter how much they may look like, they just remain methods. You may have good methods, you may have good ideas. If God is not involved in them, that's what they are, just good methods. So Paul is saying to Timothy, my son, his spiritual son, I want you to fight a good fight. But before he mentions a good fight, he said, there are prophecies that came. And those prophecies, because they came to you, they formulate the strategy for your warfare. In other words, you was going to fight based on that says the Lord. When you go to God and say, God, I need you to help me. And when you can refer to what he spoke to you, you will be actually bringing God to that situation. We find out in most cases that when God speaks to us, he wants us to gain momentum from that. Because in times of discouragement, we can go back to him and say, but God, you say this. So he said, through these prophecies, Timothy, you will fight a good warfare. And it is important to note that without God's prophetic word, it's impossible to fight a good warfare. As long as God has spoken, as long as you have a spoken word from God, you are guaranteed victory. Because everything that you do outside God, you cannot win. The Bible speaks about in the beginning, God was there. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So anything that begins in the Word of God is guaranteed success. So here he's saying to Timothy, according to the prophecies, in other words, how do you warfare? You warfare according to the prophecies. What is prophecy? Prophecy is the foretelling, or it's the word that God brings speaking about future events. Sometimes you can use the past to refer to where you are going. So you are saying to him, there were prophecies that were given to you, and because of them, you must warfare good. And not only warfare good, you must warfare according to what God has given you. What was Paul saying to Timothy? He was actually looking at him with an imagery of a soldier, or he was looking at his fight from the military imagery, which he employed describing Timothy. He said, fight a good fight, because Paul was not just telling him as a believer, he was telling him as a soldier. At some point, he says to Timothy, no one engages in warfare and entangles himself with civilian affairs. In other words, he was saying, if you're going to fight, be like someone in the army, that you don't get your information from outside, you get directives from within. In the army, you don't just fight. You have ranks that are above you that formulates your strategies of warfare. You have a mission and you take orders accordingly. So here he was saying to him, you have to warfare good. So if you have to warfare good, you have a chief in command. You will have somebody who gives you marching orders. And he was saying prophecy was given to you through the laying on of hands of the presbytery. In other words, there were a group of elders, matured men of God, who gave me prophecy, or who gave prophecies to say, Timothy, where you are heading, you need to warfare, or there are things that God is going to do in your life. So Paul was employing this description to Timothy and say, you have to believe in the word of God that he has given to you, so that you don't fall into error, into bad conduct, and so that you don't get shipwrecked. All that is found in the book of 1 Timothy. Number one, people fall into error, or people begin to do the wrong things because they are not fighting in accordance to what God has given them. In other words, your style of fighting, or if anyone in the army will fight without being given instruction, there are chances that your warfare style, you cannot, if you are ignorant in certain areas of your life, you can be taught. But if you're stupid, there's nothing anyone can do. Stupidity can last forever, There are certain things that we don't do right because we are immature. That can be excused. There are certain things that we do because we are still children. That can be excused. There are certain things we do because we are ignorant. That can be excused too. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying, Paul said, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. And he goes on to say, when I grew up, I got rid of all those immature, things. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. Let me go there with you. Maybe we can be able to find something together in that chapter so that we continue to meditate together. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, is that right? 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verses 11. It says there, let me use the right version here. King James, they say it's the most. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. As I say, being a child, there's nothing wrong with being a child. It simply means you're still growing. And he said, I spoke as a child. He goes on to say, I understood as a child. So his comprehension was limited to one of a child. I thought as I became a man, I causes you to set aside certain things. So one of the things that Paul was saying to Timothy, you've got to grow up and fight like a man. In your fighting, you have to stand. There are different postures in fighting. In your fighting, you have to run. There are times where you have to run. In your fighting, also, you have to use different, going to be a fight over teachings that were there, going around in his setting. It was a doctrinal appeal from Paul. It involved that you would stand, you would run, he would apply his faith. That's why he said, fight a good fight of faith. Your faith can be under attack. What you believe, your belief system, based on the doctrine or based on what you're being taught. So in other words, you've got to fight knowing what comes into your mind, what comes into your spirit, and what you can be hearing can defile or contaminate you or cause you to go into error. So there are a lot of things out there that people are teaching. There's a lot of outlets now that bring out information. And those outlets, all of them, if you're not careful, they can defile you or contaminate you. This is the most difficult time to pastor anybody. When we grew up, you only heard the word of God from your pastor on Sunday. We had limited television. We had limited, outlets that gave information like we have now. Today, anyone can listen to anyone at any given time. Your child has a phone in his hands. You can go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter, you can go to Instagram, you can go to YouTube. All those outlets have voices out there. So Paul was saying, fight a good fight of faith. In other words, when Paul came into the picture, he was coming from Judaism. There was a rhetoric going on that Paul was teaching the wrong doctrine. So he had to fight knowing that what he heard from Paul was from God. But how was he going to know it was from God if there was other voices that were coming? Because some other voices were contradicting with Paul, and Paul was constantly arrested. And there was a lot of things that he was fighting to who to believe. Must he believe in Paul? He was just a young man. And Paul began to tell him, now you have a fight at hand. The fight is, number one, you are young, and you have a lot of voices coming around you. You have a lot of people coming around you. So Paul was appealing to him to say, you have to fight a good fight. And I